Okay, everybody, thanks again. We appreciate your attendance today. I'm Recruiter with ProLink Solutions. I'm the Vice President for the company. And today we're going to be hosting our Procorem Tenant Portal training. It's January 25th, 2024. So thank you very much for being here. We're looking forward to hosting this training for you. Just going through the agenda for today, we have quite, it's a 2-hour training that we're about to embark on. So I want to make sure everyone gets a lay of what's going to be covered. We're going to go over a short introduction that I'm going to cover. Then I'm going to hand it off to our trainer, Sarah Supernaut, who's going to cover the invitation to Procorem piece of getting into the tenant portal, accessing the Procorem tenant portal, tenant events in the Procorem tenant portal, updating average income test designations in the portal. Then we're going to take a 10-minute break, let everyone refresh their coffee, and then we'll get back together. How to import tenant events via the XML process will be this, after that break. How to manually add tenant events, and then finally how to validate and submit tenant events. So quite a full schedule today. Just a heads up, we will be able to share this recording with you within 24 hours after we complete the training. So you'll be able to access through our YouTube channel at ProLink Solutions the training video and share that with any of your colleagues or refer back to it throughout the year. Happy to share that with you. So be rest assured, if you have to take a break or step away, you will have access to the recording very shortly. All right, so now let's go ahead and get into our quick introduction. We want to make sure you know who we are. Separate from your housing agency that you work closely with, ProLink Solutions is a technology provider in the affordable housing industry. We have been supporting affordable housing through our work for over 20 years now. Our clients, we call them the 3 pillars of affordable housing, which refers to our state and local housing finance agencies, tax credit syndicators and investors who work in affordable housing, and developers, owner agents as well. We started our business really working with those state and local housing agencies, building portfolio management systems for them to manage their affordable housing programs. So that is where our base kind of core technology is founded in. And then since then, we've been able to support and extend our offerings to other constituents in the affordable housing industry. Our goal is really to provide holistic tools for all people involved in affordable. We're all kind of paying attention and adding up to the same needs as far as data is concerned and what we're managing through technology. So as much as we can connect you with each other between our state agencies, our owner agents, and even the investors involved, the owners involved, in affordable housing, that to us is success. That eliminates inefficiencies and issues and helps us to work closer together. It also can save money, which means more affordable housing out there in the market, which is at the end of the day what we need most of all. Our team, so we are obviously technologists. We're a technology firm, but again, we've been working in the affordable housing industry for over 20 years. Many of our people have been with us pretty much that entire time as well. So certainly have an expertise and certifications across our team related to our proficiency around compliance and the affordable housing needs. For those who may be embarking on the tenant event portal for the first time this year, I want to just preface it with a little bit of a definition on what it is. So the Procorem Tenant Portal is an application that's accessed through one of ProLink's products, which is called Procorem. And this application allows you to collaborate between the agency's compliance officer and yourselves to manage your program's compliance needs and submit your data to the agency. You'll receive, as a first step, an invitation from Procorem to join the work center associated with your property and collaborate with that agency. If you manage multiple properties for compliance reporting, you're going to receive multiple invitations, one for each property for those work centers. And then Tenant events can be manually entered, or they can be imported using XML files generated from your property management software, ideally, to eliminate that manual entry requirement. Average income test designations for your property can also now be updated in the Procorem tenant portal. So that's quite a bit of what we've been focused on over the last year, is preparing for some of those regulatory changes that we've seen in recent years. And I just want to reiterate as well, before we get started, that your agency is still your main point of contact for any questions outside of this training as it relates to the Procorem tenant portal. So as you're probably familiar, there's a process that has probably been shared with you as to reaching out for assistance. Please utilize that process with your agency. ProLink is here behind the scenes, and I'm about to share some opportunities for us to provide additional support if needed. So that's what I'm going to get into really quick as well. So this is a busy season for us all, compliance. And certainly over the years in supporting our state agencies, ProLink has been involved in a number of different situations to support partners. And so therefore we have a number of service offerings that we are launching to support directly our owner agents and property managers through this very busy season. So I wanted to share this with you ahead of time as you are nearing your deadlines. We have a number of services that ProLink can offer separately from the agency, not through the agency, but directly with you if you need it. So please contact us at marketing@prolinkSolutions.com if you're interested. The first area is a dedicated Procorem account. So if you have been working in Procorem to submit your compliance needs and you need a place to manage and store that information, please consider Procorem. You can get access to your own Procorem account and be the owner of that account, just like a state agency invites you in to join work centers. You could do the same. This would allow you to store, share, and collaborate in a secure portal that's relied upon by the state agencies as well. It's a digital and accessible location. It's cloud-based, so you can access that on your iPad or your phone, anywhere you might be. It really helps with task management and projects. Can also really streamline collaboration on critical activity when you're working with internal and external relationships that you might have. And really, I think one of the biggest benefits potentially with Procorem for our owner agents is the ability to manage your tenant files. So certainly you can upload all required documentation for LIHTC and Section 8 programs and do a lot of that file management, all of that file management through those work centers that are secure and private between your tenants and our owner agents. All documentation is also time-stamped and easily accessible for audit purposes. And soon we're going to be able to run an occupancy report for any as of date through Procorem. So a number of opportunities there, and just kind of being well prepared and responsible with the data management side of everything that you guys are dealing with. Also on top of that, ProLink can run compliance tests against your property ahead of submitting your information and going through compliance at the agency level. So it's kind of like a pre-test opportunity to help ensure that you are ready when you do submit that data and go through that process with the agency. We can also evaluate income and rent limits against set-aside. So a number of things there. And then finally, tenant data collection support is a major, concern and hurdle every year. If you are trying to take advantage of the XML import functionality through your property management system, there can be issues sometimes where you might have a previous version of that property management tool, that generates an old version of XML, whether we're on version 7 at this point. Could be that your system might produce version 2 through 6. We are able to import that still, even though it's on a previous version. We can import that from your property management system and then basically convert it to the standards of version 7 XML. We can also, and then export that and make that available to you through that in that version 7 XML standard. So something to keep in mind, if you're not planning to upgrade that property management tool, but you do have that need, please reach out to us and we'd be happy to help. Data entry support as well. We can help with entering household members' income and assets data. And then also we can help you in generating the printed version of a standard TIC, tenant income certification form for signature. So a lot of opportunities for us to provide another level of support. Each needs are different across the board. So if this sparks interest, or if there's something that I did not include on this list, but you could really use some help with, please don't hesitate to reach out to ProLink. We do have professional services available in our organization to help with all of these processes. Okay, and without further ado, I'm going to hand it off for our training. So just to introduce Sarah Supernot, she is our customer success representative and trainer. She's been with ProLink for over 15 years now, started back in our quality assurance and has just done a wonderful job really helping instrumentally in building ProLink HFA from those very early days and Procorem testing and really building these processes along our clients over the years to ensure a smooth and thorough compliance process for all parties involved. She's a lot of the direct interactions that our owner agents have with our agency clients in supporting their needs. So Sarah, thank you so much for doing this. This is your third year, I think, hosting this event, and it's obviously growing in popularity over the years, and we appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Hi, everybody. I think Bree gave you the overview of how long I've been here and what I've been doing for ProLink HFA. And I kind of want to talk about how when I first came into this company, I knew little to nothing about affordable housing. And as we've, grown as a company and as a team, we've had many opportunities to acquire certifications to learn more about various aspects of affordable housing, so we may better assist you when you're going through things like this or you're using our software. What we do collectively, whether it's the agency or the owner agents or us as an interface or developers, is very important at providing affordable housing for everyone. And so during training, I like to make jokes. I like to make things a little light, but I want to be very clear. In no way am I trying to undercut the message that what we do is important and necessary, and attention to detail and getting our information right to provide that housing is very important. So I'll try to remember to hammer that home while I'm trying to entertain you with a random GIF here or there. But yeah, we're all in this together to provide affordable housing and try to make our jobs easier while we do it. So let us get started. I think we talked about, we're going to have a Q&A open through the entire training. And after each section that we go through, we're going to have an opportunity for you to ask questions. Please try to keep your questions to the topic at hand. If you ask about something that we're going to address later, someone may tell you to wait, we'll get to it. And then by the end of the training, if we haven't answered that question for you, please do ask. And we'll get to you as soon as we can. So the first thing we want to start with is how you get invited to Procorem, where the tenant portal is. And so many of you on here probably are already part of Procorem, and you already have your user ID and your account and whatnot, and you have your work centers. But if this is your first time, I'm going to kind of breeze through this because, like Bree mentioned, we're going to have this recording available on YouTube, and we're going to have it broken up into sections. So you don't have to listen to me for the entire time to get to what you need to get to. You'll be able to go to a certain point in the recording and find it. And this invitation will be one of those things. So the first thing is, when you're added to a work center, you should get an email invitation. And if you've never logged into Procorem before, you're going to see a little button that says sign up in your invitation, and you're going to click on that. If you don't get your invite, we have three things we have to check off. We have to make sure that it's not in your junk folder. We have to make sure that your IT department has not filtered that out at your network level for whatever reason, because sometimes this mail extension gets caught up in spam filters. And then we want to verify your information is correct. But yes, if you don't get the email, that's your first do a couple of things to make sure that it didn't get there. We can just verify that it's been generated to you and generated to the correct email address. Once it goes off into the interwebs, it's just, we don't track it. Once you've created an account in Procorem and receive an invite to additional work centers, you will get invites. And those invites, once you're part of the account, will be like, just click here and you'll be able to navigate to that new work center that you've been invited to. Now, initially, if you've never signed up before, you're going to get to this page when you click that sign up button. And this is relatively easy. Just make sure your first and last name is correct. The email that you have in there is correct. Make sure your password meets the criteria and agree to the, very ambiguous terms and conditions. And then sign up now. And that's going to add you to the system so you can get in and start doing what you need to do and collaborating in Procorem. So once you log in, one of the first things you're going to see is you're going to be on the home page. And then it's going to kind of give you an idea of what housing finance agency that you're working with and one of the work centers that you might have access to. And when you get here and you click on your work center, it's going to show files is kind of like your home work center page. You'll be able to see anybody else that's on that work center with you. Those will be your additional collaborators. You can also select if you want to get emails immediately or in a digest for things that happen on the work center, whether it's post or tasks get assigned or files have been uploaded or something like that. So you can customize your email preferences if you would like. Once you've created your account, like we said, you'll receive an email invitation for each work center you've been invited to. And then after you've been in a few times and you have some, and some of you just have one property, some of you have a ton of properties. And so if you need to get to one of them, what you can do is once you log in here and you see your housing finance agency, there's this little button down here that says go to account. And when you click on that, it's going to bring up another screen that allows you to look at all the work centers that you've been added to. So you can kind of just have a high level view of what all you're involved with. I would suggest bookmarking this in your browser because that way when it comes time for your, yearly reporting, you can just click on a button and then go down and find that work center without having to go to your account, etc. Just make your life a little bit easier. So do we have any questions about the initial invitation to Procorem?
Not right now.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, so now we'll talk about accessing the tenant portal. You've gotten your Procorem account, you've logged in, you're a user, you're on a work center. So kind of the same idea. When we talk about Procorem, we talk about the left navigation panel. Sometimes I'll call it the left nav panel. That's what I mean. I'm talking about this little left-hand side over here. So that's going to show the work centers and you can click on your desired work center from there, or you can search for it or go into your account like we showed you earlier. Once you get in here and you see all these other items at your work center, and you can tell what work center you're in because you're going to have, it's going to be listed here in your breadcrumb. It's going to be listed here at the top. There's going to be an option at the bottom called tenant events. Now it may be called something different as your agency can customize what they want to call it. Unit status report, annual tenant events entry, what have you. But whoops, once you hover over this, it's going to tell you this will help you manage your compliance reviews. So that's how you know you're going to the right place. So once you click on that, it's going to take you to what we call the compliance periods page. And these are going to be the year for the work center or the property you're working on. And it's going to show you how many of those compliance review years exist. Like for right now, when you're going out there and doing this, you should have a 2023 available because your agency stubbed those records out so you can begin your yearly reporting. Now, if you go there and you are fully expecting to see compliance reviews because you got to put in your events, you don't see anything, you need to contact your agency. Now, last year we had people ask us, if we knew who their asset managers were. Probably not, but I can tell you that a really sure way to be able to find that is when you are on your work center. You can look over here in the right nav panel in the right list of collaborators. A lot of the agencies will have their asset managers designated as this agency asset manager. And you can always put a post in the work center if you don't know. All right, so using the tenant portal, this is kind of the streamlined way of looking at it, or what we call the happy path. You'll provide your property data to the agency when they first onboard. I'm sure you'll provide your rent roll and all the other information. And once you're ready to go and you've uploaded everything else you need, we'll have all the unit and building data built out in their system. And that's going to allow you to submit your tenant events through the tenant portal. Now, there's two ways to do this. If you have a property management system, that gives you the ability to generate the NAMA unit status report, because I feel like that's not everybody has that. You might have a property management system. That does not mean you have the XML generation piece that is going to give you the NAMA unit status report. And if at any time you can't find it, you don't know where to go, you should contact the help desk at your property management system to ask them, how do I find this? How do I get this if I don't have it? Because we're kind of blind on that side, because we just take the XML. We're like waiting outside, saying, give us the XML, then we can help you. But as far as getting you the XML, we don't have a lot of visibility with that. So when you have the ability to generate your NAMA XML unit status report, you can import your tenant event data through the importer in the tenant portal. If you don't have the XML, you have to manually enter the tenant events. And I know some of you that have small properties or don't have very many properties, there's no need for you to have an XML because you're not working with a huge amount of data. But we're going to cover both of these ways to enter the tenant events, so you know. In any case, once you do get those tenant events loaded into the system, you have to validate the data. And there's a few steps to this. It's a process. Once you get a successful import, that's good. That means the basics are in there, but that still means there's going to be some checking before you actually get them to the agency to maintain the integrity of the data, to make sure everything is in order. And then once you validate it, if you get errors on your validation, you can correct them and do it again. For XML, sometimes you have to go and update your system and regenerate that XML with the correct data, and kind of like wash, rinse, repeat. I will say that a lot today. I'm sorry, but I will. So once everything's good, you've had the successful import or entering of your tenant data, you will validate the data, you will correct any errors, and then you will submit the data to your agency. And then your work is kind of done with the portal. So there are two ways to enter tenant events, which I think I mentioned before. One, XML import. We're going to have a screen, and I'll show you how to get there. That's going to tell you exactly how this works. I'm going to say this. I'm going to repeat myself a lot today. I'm kind of sorry, but I'm kind of not, because I don't want all of you to forget some of these things. This yellow section you're going to see on a lot of pages has important information. And it's going to tell you a lot of what I'm telling you today, but it's always there for you to look at, along with help text, which we will get to. So what happens with the import, like I said, if you have a property management software, and I don't want to play favorites, but there are a lot of them out there. I can think of the big three that I've worked with the most, but I'm not going to say it because, again, not playing favorites. But they give you the ability to take all that tenant data that you have and generate your NAMA unit status report. So you can just upload all your tenant events instead of having to put them in one by one. And if you have a property that has 1,000 units, you really want the XML, because you don't want to spend all your time putting in data for 1,000 units, no matter how important providing low-income housing is. There's just always a more efficient way to do things that need to be done. So manual entry, owner agents can enter tenant events manually for the compliance period. If you're, a small property, you only have 10 or 20 units, this is not terrible. It's still not as good as importing, but it's not horrible, and you can do it. We do have a couple of changes coming in our next release in quarter, I believe we're going to quarter 2, where the list compliance period screen will actually show the reporting dates, because I know that sometimes the reporting period dates you have may not be what the HFA has, and you'll be able to see exactly what they have in their system on this screen. And it will also be on the compliance period page once you get in there, because a lot of times our breadcrumbs are very good at getting us back and forth to where we need to be in the system. But sometimes we need a little more help to remember where we are. Or maybe that's just me. If I click around enough, I'm like, how did I get here? This is not my beautiful house, etc., etc. Whoops. So again, as I mentioned before, repetitively so. Read the yellow text. It's going to have information that, you know, you can read that. It might answer the questions that you have. So do we have any questions just about how to get to the tenant portal?
Just a few about how to get an invitation. And so I'll
Oh.
say this out loud, excuse me.
Cool.
If you're an owner agent, property manager, you'll communicate with your state agency that you're reporting to receive invitations to Procorem.
Can
Okay.
you repeat that?
If you are an owner agent, you will receive an invitation from the state agency or agencies that you are reporting to.
That is correct. Once they start onboarding and they need you to participate in the monitoring and compliance, you should get an invite. There are times that we have owner agents or external folks email us and say, hey, I need to get added to this work center. We can tell you, you know, we can't add you. If there are system issues, we can resolve those, but access issues, we can't just add you to any old work center. We may get yelled at for that. And we have, or I have. So we will pass you over. We will find someone at your agency that we have communicated with in the past, and then we'll just like email them and say, hey, can you help this person? So you should be able to find out who the person is who needs to invite you to Procorem. But if not, put in a support ticket and we will help you. And I see a couple of these questions. Michelle, I'll reach out to you later. We'll get to the XML submission. So we will move on to the next question. Sorry, I always get distracted by the questions because I want to do everything all the time, all at once, right now. But I know we can't do that. So this is exciting. The first, one of the things we've added this year that everyone's been waiting for, maybe excitedly, maybe not so excitedly, depending on how much work that was going to put on your personal plate, is updating the average income test designations in our tenant portal. So the good news is we have 3 different ways that this information can get updated when you use our tenant portal and you're reporting events to one of our HFAs. The first way is if you have version 7 in your property management software and it has the ability to generate your XML file, you should be able to generate your AAT unit designations with the XML file. This way, now if this is you, you don't really have to pay too much attention to where we're going to talk about the import your AIT designations or manually enter your AIT designations. The only way this may affect you is if you have to update manually, but we'll get to that. But this is like, if it was me, I would want this. It's like, oh, you're going to put the AIT information from my property management system into my XML. Sign me up. That's, whoops, totally cool. Whoop. I have a roller mouse that I'm apparently not getting along with well today. So then you can also manually enter these through the AIT project designations pages, which we will show you. And then by using the import designations function, you can download an Excel template that's going to pull in all the data from your AIT bin, populate it, and zip it back up to the system so you don't have to manually enter all this stuff for your AIT designations. And let me be clear, because I know that we've thrown in another import. Importing your AIT designations is a separate animal from importing XML with your tenant events. When we talk about downloading a template here, it's an Excel spreadsheet. You don't need anything too fancy, just to be able to open an Excel spreadsheet and type in it and send it up. So don't let the import word scare you. So are we ready? We're going to get started with the 3 different ways to do your AIT designations. And I'm going to try to be very thorough and talk somewhat slow through this. And then after this is over, we're going to take a break. All right. So updating your designations with your XML import. Again, like I said, this is XML. Some of you, I probably didn't address that. I probably didn't say this is what XML looks like. It's not as scary as it looks. I've spent a lot of time with the XML and we generally get along very well. So this tells me that this information is going to update the unit AIT designation information on that unit before it starts adding the event, right? And this is, like I said, will be built into your XML if you have the property management system that will generate your XML with the IET stuff. And if you don't know if you have that, or if your property management doesn't, if you know you have a property management system, I would suggest calling your software representative, your help desk, and saying, do you have the ability to generate, or does my subscription or what my product have the ability to generate the NAMA XML unit status report along with the AIT designations required for the tenant data, or something like that? You should be able to find out if they provide that support or not. So what happens is once you zip that up there, it just populates everything in here for each unit. It's just there, which is magic and awesome. I was very excited about that because that makes if I want to test or set up test data, that makes my life so much easier. Something that I'm going to also repeat a lot today, if this is the first year you've entered AIT designation information, the effective date for anything at this point should be 1/1/2023. And the reason is, first of all, you cannot update your effective dates outside of a current, outside of a compliance period that's been finalized. So by now, most of your 2020 reviews have been finalized. So you need to start with 1/1/2023. Going forward, you'll have the ability to update with the actual event date if that's when you're doing it. But for now, we want to do 1/1/2023. So if you're not going to update it through the XML, what you're going to do is you're going to update it through the tenant portal. Now, we talked about coming into Procorem, and then we're going to click on tenant events. And then at that point, you're going to be brought to the compliance period screen here. If you have a bin that is part of the AIT designation, or that is AIT, you're going to see this blue ribbon. And even if it's just one bin on like a 7-bin building, you're going to have the option to manipulate the data for the bin that does have AIT on it. So once you go in there and click that button, it's going to take you to the AIT project designations page. And this is where all the information for the bin is going to be listed here. Again, if this is the first year you've entered AIT designation, 1/1/2023, and I've tried to make that obvious throughout this training. So here's a note about AIT designations. If the bin is designated as an AIT bin, every single unit is going to need an AIT unit designation, a qualified group of units, which I joked with someone I was going to start calling GROGU because I like to just shorten my acronyms, and the applicable fraction group destination with the effective dates. Even if it's market, even if it's excluded, it has to be represented if that unit is part of an AIT bin. Otherwise, you're going to go over here and you're going to see this. And red is bad. If you see anything missing, you need to make sure that's going to be updated. Now, one of the nuances that you probably won't find out until you validate your tenant events is if a unit is marked yes for the qualified group of units, then the unit must be marked yes for the applicable fraction group of units. Like here, this one is not. It's marked yes for QGU and no for AFG. I'm going to get a validation error on this when I go to validate my tenant events, because it's going to validate the AIT designations along with the tenant events all at once. I'll get a validation error on that because this should be yes. But conversely, oddly enough, if you have something that's marked yes for AFG, it doesn't have to be marked yes for QGU, which I don't make the rules. So there you go. All right. So to manually update the designations, this is really simple. When you go to the project designations page and you already have some data out here that you want to update, all you have to do is click into the item that you want to update. And once you do that, it's going to take you to the actual designation page. Oh, look at me getting excited. Just for that unit. So here you can see in this example, I didn't have any information on here yet, but all you have to do is verify where you're at by looking at this and looking at this. Now you know you're in building 1 and unit 105. So the unit designations page, once you click, this is self-explanatory. Apparently I felt the need to tell you repeatedly. AIT unit designation, AIT qualified group of units. You add each of them separately. So for the unit designation, one of the things that we want to point out, you always want to update your unit designations and stuff before you import your tenant events, especially when there are transfer events. And as through is pretty much common through Procorem, if you see a red ribbon, that means that field is required for a successful save. Now, when you save the AIT unit designation, it's going to check the unit type that correlates with the unit designation of the most recent tenant event prior. And it goes through some validation and just making sure this is okay. If there's something weird and you save, you will get a validation error. I think that it's really, really good that manually entering this information, Procorem is going to tell you if there's an error, and it's going to be pretty descriptive to let you know what you need to do to fix it. And here again, we're talking about 1/1/2023. So qualified group of units, same thing. You can't add, edit, or delete records for any compliance years that have been finalized. So right now, like I said, 2022 should have been finalized. You're only going to be doing things for 2023 and forward. So next year when we have this training, we might have some updates on what dates you want to use. We'll still have kind of an overview of what that's going to look like once we've all kind of settled in and started using this. Again, like I said, 1/1/2023. Applicable fraction group. You just click that button to add it. And again, red ribbon indicates everything that's required. Can't edit, add, delete records for finalized compliance years. So again, right now, 1/1/2023 is going to be where you need to start. So once you've updated everything and you go back to your AIT unit designations page and you've saved and returned, and you can see here my blank page is now populated. You just click on the AT project designations in your breadcrumb, and it's going to take you back so you can see everything you've updated on that particular bin. And again, if it's, whatever bin on the project is AIT, which it doesn't have to be any of them. So you can update all of them using the bulk import. So now we've gone through the XML way to get things uploaded. We've gone through how we manually enter them. Now we're going to talk about the magic spreadsheet and how we use the bulk import option for import designations. So the first thing you want to do when you go, to the project designations page is you're going to want to click import designations button. That's going to take you to the import unit designations page. At that point, you're going to click download template. What that's going to do is going to bring up this AIT unit designations. It's just a very generic label for the spreadsheet with the current date. This is what it's going to look like when you bring it up. So I'm going to stop right now. I'm going to pop over here into my Procorem live view and kind of show you what that looks like. So here's a fake property I've been playing with. And a lot of people, will ask me, I know that not everybody, everybody's good at different things in Excel. And sometimes you may not know some of these little itty bitty tips and tricks. Like, I'm not afraid to admit that it was like a year and a half ago that I finally learned what Control-Z is. So, hey, it's never too late to learn something. It's really not. So when I go over here and I do my import designations, and I click download template, it's going to pop up over here. I'm going to click on it and bring that up. Oh, it's shy. It's going to be shy. Hang on. Bear with me, folks. Well, I don't know if that's going to happen. I was really hoping to show this to you. Okay, well, they'll take my word for it. So what you would do is you would kind of click on these because you can see that all the data is smushed together, right? So you just click on it, highlight it, and then you would get this, click in the middle between two letters where it has the two black arrows and double click it. And that's going to space out your spreadsheet. Again, Most of you may probably know that, some of you may not, but that's just kind of a trick. So once you open this template, it's going to pull in the data that already exists in the system. It's going to pull in all the unit information, the bin information, the address, the unit number, and the unit size. Those cannot be changed. You can do whatever you want over there, and that it's just going to lose its focus on where the data is supposed to go. So when you come in here, don't touch any of that information when it comes to bin, building address, unit, and unit size. Don't touch it. All you care about is AIT unit designation and the change reasons and the effective dates in the comments. They're going to have 3 tabs for each group that you need to update when you have that spreadsheet. So click on download template. You have a spreadsheet for that particular property. And I would save it. I would save it to your computer with a property name and the year in it, just so you can keep track of it. So again, it will populate with all the information that is already in the system, and the existing designation will display if it's in there. So for the AIT unit designation tab, this is what's important. The AIT unit designation value, it has to be one of these values. And the thing is, even if, like you can see in this example, we have 1 market unit and 3 that are excluded, we can't just leave those blank. They all need data. So you have to, consciously mark these as excluded or market or whatever they're going to be. And the same thing falls into, once you've done that, you have to do the same thing for the unit designation change reason. The values entered in here must match this, and they must be exact. This is a NAMA standard. This is how we get our, our code to talk to each other. It's looking for tenant movement with no spaces. It's looking for law-other without spaces between those. So when you manually enter this information, there's a drop down, but when you're doing it this way, there's no drop down. You just have to put in straight raw data for that. And then, and this is, exactly what is in the NAMA 7.0 standard, XML standard, is that these have to look like that. And this is what they mean. You'll notice that if you've manually added something, that you're going to see, these are the values you will see in the dropdown. But with the raw data spreadsheet, you have to use those values. So again, we've talked about this. If you're going to update that the first time, unit designation effective date needs to be 1/1/2023 this year. This will be a different discussion next year, but right now, 1/1/2023. I'm going to be singing that in my sleep. Comments are optional on your unit designation unless your agency wants you to put comments in there. So we're going through the same thing with the AIT qualified group of units. Even if that's going to be a market unit or it's going to be excluded, it has to be a yes or no with an effective date. Same thing with, we're going to get to applicable fraction group. You can only enter yes or no. If you leave it blank, you might get an error on import, but you might get an error on import, and we'll show you what the error on import means. And I know people heard error on import and they don't like that, but we'll get to it. Effective date 1/1/2023. Now, if you enter a value in the qualified group of units, again, you have to enter an effective date. So all of this works together and everything needs to be populated on this particular tab. Comments optional unless your agency requests them. Now we're to the applicable fraction group. You're seeing a theme here. You're seeing a trend. Yes or no are valid values. Have to have the effective date, right? Yes or no, can't be blank, must be a Y, must be an N. I don't know if it has to be capitalized or not. Kelly might be able to speak to that, but just capitalize it. Applicable fraction group effective date 1/1/2023. Oh my gosh, how many times have I said that? I'm not getting paid by the date 1/1/2023 to keep saying that, by the way. Should have thought about that. All right, so now that you've had all that data and you have it in your spreadsheet for each tab based on what we kind of showed you, I know we whizzed through that. I will have a help link to show you as soon as we're done with this section. So you not only, if you want to watch this again and go through it and see kind of a demo, that's fine, but we have more help for you. Once you've entered all the information, you save that document. Very important, close that document, because as I can tell you, it's not going to let you upload a file if you have it open. I don't know how many times my computer has to tell me, but apparently it's quite a bit. So once you do that and you've chosen the file, it's going to ask you if you're going to clear any previously loaded data that has not been finalized. So that means if you had uploaded one and then you have to go back and change it, it's going to overwrite everything. So that's what we're going to do. It'll just overwrite whatever's out there for, like, if you had, okay, here's an example. Let's say you put in, there is 2022 data that exists and that hasn't been finalized, and your 2023 events are going to have different AIT designations. Then, well, your 2023 is going to upload the 2022 data because it's not finalized. So, that's something you might run into. If that happens, put in a ticket. We'll get you taken care of. Once you've clicked OK and you go through the processing, you'll see the processing ribbon, which means the system's thinking. We told the system to do something. Now it's thinking. Then you're going to see the file over here that shows the name of the file, and you can click upload. I may have done that on backwards. Now, if there's errors, and that can happen, these are not as scary as XML errors. I'll tell you that right now. But it'll come up with a little log file. And if it comes up with complete with errors, you click that log file, it's going to tell you exactly what you did wrong. And it's like invalid AIT unit designation change reason. That could be that you just put in an invalid reason. It needs to match that list that we gave you, right? Or it's going to be like, you can't have this without this. Just read the error message and be like, and then go look at your spreadsheet, your designation spreadsheet, because you're going to like, okay, designation change reason for building 1. Obviously, you're on the AIT unit designation tab, unit 101 on row 2, and it's going to tell you what. So it won't import those records that have errored. Your import history is going to let you know what successfully got pulled in here. Now, since we talked about that every unit needs to be updated, even if it's excluded in market, I can look at this, and we had 20 AIT unit designations imported, 8 AIT qualified group, and 1 AIT. It's going to let me upload that. It's not going to be angry that I did. It's going to be completed. But when I go to validate my tenant events, it's going to be mad because we don't have some qualified group and things that have been updated, even if it's a yes or a no. It just has to be addressed in the designations. Once they have been updated successfully, at that point, if you're confident that they're working good, go ahead and start working on your tenant events. Because you've done the AIT designations and we are done with that particular item. Okay, so what did I want to show you here? I had questions. I think I was going to show you some help real quick. And we do have some questions. And after this, we are going to take a quick break. But I want to show you that, and this will be in the spreadsheet that we're going to provide a PDF of this presentation to you as well. For everybody asking questions about, I missed this part, can I go through that? We're going to put the video up and you can go through that at your own time. I am just hammering through everything today. But once you go out here into the help text for Procorem, if you bring up the AIT information, you're going to see a lot of information about average income designations and then tenant portal. It's going to kind of go over things one by one. I believe we have a video that may be coming out here too that's in our help center. But this is going to go over in a lot more detail what we are trying to just high level cover and give you the basics today so you can get started. So this link will be in the document. You'll be able to look, you'll be able to go to it. But I suggest if you're having problems that you hop into this. It's going to go over the import as well. We're not going to leave you stranded without any help. So feel free to go out there and take a look at it when you need to. So Kelly, are there any questions you'd like me to address right now?
We are okay so far, Sarah. We're good. We're good to go.
Does anybody think I'm talking too fast? Because that's something I like to do.
Slow down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a post-it. Apparently I didn't read it. Ooh, I promise to slow down after we take a break. So if we don't have any more, I see somebody asking turnaround time for completing ticket requests. It just honestly, it depends on the issue, the ticket. If it's assistance, it's usually pretty quick, depending on the workload of me and our customer support team, whether or not. But usually, if it's something we can jump on and help you out with, we can jump on call, help you out. again, it just depends. I know that's really vague, but you know, if you don't have a specific issue, I can't tell you how long it takes us to turn around, but I can tell you the customer success team likes to take care of things and take care of our people and our customers as soon as we possibly can. All right, so if we don't have any more questions, we're going to go ahead and take a 10-minute break, and we'll come back here at what I guess is going to be 2:01 Eastern. And yeah, we'll be back in a bit. All right, so I think we are ready to move on to the meat of our discussion, is how to import our tenant events via XML. Now, I'm going to preface this by letting you know that we are going to be repetitive in several scenarios, because I understand that once we finish this and we publish it out on YouTube, that there's only going to be certain sections that you want to look at. Like if you look at the import tenant events via XML, you want to kind of see some stuff about validation if that's all you want to watch. Same thing with manual entry. And then we'll go over validate and submit ad nauseum, because I promised some of my agency asset managers that I would, with all the tickets and assistance that we've provided people, because I know that a lot of you will enter tickets when you need some assistance, and we try to help you through Zendesk, and you know, try to get you on the straight and narrow of what's going on. I can tell you what some of the biggest potholes are, and you know, and all some of the things that we've experienced. You may have even put in a ticket for assistance with something. You know, there are things that trip us all up every now and then. So I'm gonna try to accentuate those, and then we'll go forward and how we can stop that from happening. I've seen some of the questions that have been coming up on our Q&A. I can't not look at them, but I'm going to try, because I know Sam and Bree will prefer that I don't. So again, importing XML, we're going through what we did in the beginning. You log into your work center and you go to your tenant portal, which is going to say tenant events or something that your agency, very similar, but if you hover over, you'll get the tooltip. Now, once your compliance period screen displays for this year, you should see 2023. The first time you go in here to import your 2023 events, you should see 2023 tenant events. So if you don't see that and you're pretty sure you need to report, contact the asset manager at your agency and explain to them that you don't see any compliance periods. That just means they need to update that in their ProLink HFA system, so you have access to that. So there's some information on these compliance period screens. Like the first time you come out here, probably for 2023, when you first went out there, it was going to say none. You haven't imported any events. You haven't submitted. It's pending because you haven't done anything. I can tell you in process means that they're working behind the scenes at the agency to do that. Most of them should say finalized. That is the hope. If you go in here and it says finalized, that's on the previous year, that's what you want. Now, if you've already submitted them for whatever reason, it says submitted and you need to make changes, you're going to have to talk to someone at the agency to set those back to a status where you can make your updates. Export events will allow you to view the tenant data that was imported from previous years or your current year, and it'll show up in an Excel spreadsheet. It's just kind of like a basic rent roll data dump that you can take a gander at. And then if it's just informational for you, it shows what has been put into the system. And then selecting view events is going to be what takes you to where you need to import your XML document. Once you get to the view events, but let's see, when we click view events, it takes you to the compliance period page. This is where you have the option to import or manually enter. We're going to talk about manual tenant event entry after the XML import section, for those of you who are asking. So don't worry, we're going to get to that. But if you have the property management system that exports the XML for you, this is where you're going to go. You're going to click on import tenant events. And now you're going to come, before we talk about that, sorry, I got a little mixed up here. I want to let you know that where the data is, what you're seeing when you come to the screen, we have this, all the buildings and the units are going to be on this compliance period screen. And these little arrows Over here, you click them, they expand and collapse, which, you know, if you're not manual entering, it's not that important. But if you get some data errors, like with your building address or your BEN, this is where you can come look, because this is pulling in data directly from ProLink HFA, from the agency side. So this allows you to compare and make sure that your data that you have in your system is correct. Because, you know, the first step at having a clean tenant event submission is making sure that all your data that you have input into the system is correct. Because we're not perfect, we're human, we're still better than AI, but we're still not perfect. So we just have to make sure that everything is correct when we're reporting and using our computers to translate our information and save it for us. And this is basic. You got your building address, your BEN, the unit type, the last head of household, and the last event date. Selecting import tenant events will take the user to the import page, and the button will be disabled if you've already submitted your tenant events. So if you've submitted them and the agency has evaluated them and says you need to change them, and you try to go here and it's you know, it's disabled, they'll have to make some adjustments in the back office for you to be able to do another import at that point. But as long as this is impending and you can click on that, you can continue to import. Do keep in mind what the breadcrumb options are going to show you. Here's the name of the property you're on or the work center you're on. And this is the year that we're at for here. We're in 2022 right now. So again, I told you I'd be repetitive. I did not lie. Read this information that's in the yellow pages. We have, or in the yellow section, we have updated this for our average income projects. And I apologize to everybody who asked what AIT means. I assumed that everybody knew what that meant. So average income testing is something new. I believe the IRS did put out their documentation last year. It's been over a year. I remember where we were when we got that. So import process notes. Please note, and this is super important, every time you upload a new XML file, any events you have uploaded for this compliance period, and that's important for the compliance period that you're reporting on, will be deleted. And it's important to know that if you import an XML and then you have to make some manual updates because you get validation errors, and then for some reason you have to come back and do it again, it's going to overwrite anything, you know. So just keep that in mind, because it's going to ask you straight up, do you want to overwrite this data? And you do. If you have scattered site with properties, and I know that some of you do, talk to your agency, because if they have that scattered site and their system is one property and you have like 8 XML files, your agency should be able to talk to you about how we can combine those together and then make it one file to match what's in the system. New events will be created from the data in the most recently successful imported XML file. If the compliance period is finalized, you cannot import new tenant events. Now, if you have a problem and some of these errors you can't resolve and you can't, you know, you don't have contact information for your asset manager, what you can do if you get an error, you can go over here in the work center and click on posts and then just say, hey, I'm having some issues with this file. Could you please assist? Let them know what the issues are. They should be able to go over to the tenant events and look at your import page to see some of the errors you get. And maybe make some suggestions, or you can specifically ask them, can you tell me exactly what the property name you have in your system? Because that's something the agency and the property needs to talk about whose information is right. We always I personally lean towards the agency. It's like the agency gets to dictate what this needs to be in your system. So, you know, listen to them if they ask you to update something. Otherwise, if there's a reason why you can't, that is just a discussion that should take place between you and your agency. We are Switzerland or Malta. We are very, very neutral in that conversation. So once you have generated the XML file and you have saved it to your computer and you're in the correct one, what you can do is click on choose file, and then it's going to bring up your little window from your computer and just go find that file that you have. Like here's one that I had for 2022. Select the file and then click open. And what that's going to do, it's going to show this. This means, okay, here's the file that I selected to import. Now, if that's the right one, or you accidentally pick the wrong year, you can cancel. If you upload it, you'll just get errors. But if you need to pick the correct file, you can cancel and do this again. But once you're sure you have that correct file, you can click upload. Now, we talked about this, the warning that you're going to get on upload, and I'm going to kind of take a slight detour here and talk about what this means for people who do it once a year to some people who do it every month. If you are uploading events once a year, this is your reminder that once you upload the XML file, all previous events for the current appliance period will be overwritten by data, even if you corrected them manually. Let's say that you had some validation errors, and we'll get to those in a minute, and you had to correct them, but something else happened and then you had to regenerate that file. If you didn't make those edits in your property management system, based on what the validation errors were telling you to correct, when you import the XML again, you're going to get them again because they're going to overwrite everything that you did. So the goal is to finally get to a point where one file to rule them all, and with the data that comes out of your system. Now, if your agency instructs you to upload your tenant events on a monthly basis, and this is specific because Rhode Island Housing asked us to talk about this, remember that you're concatenating the events when you export the data from your system on a month to create the XML file. If you're someone who just does them yearly, you don't need to listen to this, and I don't want to confuse you. But let's talk about we'll say we're talking about the 2023 reporting year, and we're just going to go back on our little time machine and our TARDIS, if you will, and talk about how they would have done this. So if Rhode Island Housing is requiring you to submit your tenant events in by the 10th of the month, what you would do is go into your property management system. And for 2023, you would have started doing this data input last year. You would have pulled your NAMA unit status report for the dates of 1/1/23 to 1/31/2023, and then you would import. Now, this would give you a chance to kind of correct any errors, like on a monthly basis. So by the time you get to the end of the year, you don't have to. It also gives Rhode Island Housing a chance to review your data and kind of catch any errors ahead of time. So then come generating your file for February, probably around March 10th, you would put in your system the dates you want to pull for 1/1/2023 to February 28th, unless it's leap year, which I don't think it is. It might be. I can't remember. All right. For this year anyway. When you generate your file for March, which you would generate in April, you want to get all of January, February, and March in that and upload it. But you're building on this file because you're still putting your tenant event dates every month, but doing this, uploading your data to your agency once a month gives them kind of a leg up on, seeing what's going on and finding out where you're at and how everything is going. So by the time you get to the end of the year, like let's say probably this month, you have generated a file from your system with a start date of 1/1/2023 and an end date of December 31st, 2023. In most cases, not in all cases. If you just had a building that for some reason got placed in service mid-year, obviously that would be your compliance start date, and that's a discussion between you and your agency. So by the time you get to the end of the year, you'll have the one big file that has everything in it. Any updates you've made, any changes, any additions, it's all going to be in that one file. And your data, in theory, would be cleaner than anybody else's because you've already done this a bunch through the year. But again, that's up to your agency, and what they say goes. So your successful import, once you have that file, you have imported it, you're going to see this blue processing ribbon that comes up on the screen. You'll see that the tenant event import has been scheduled. That means that it's now in line to process your events. It could take a few minutes. It shouldn't take more than 10 or 15 minutes. It really shouldn't, and that's a lot. If this happens and this is going and it's going and you've done this at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and it's 4 o'clock and you're going home for work and it's still doing this, you need to let us know, because that is an issue that we can take care of. That means that we have, I'm not sure what it means. I just know that our developers are awesome and they can fix it. So put in a ticket with support, and we'll cover what that looks, how you enter a support ticket before the session's over. Put in a ticket and let us know that your tenant events are stuck. And we call this, okay, the tenant events are stuck. Now, if everything is complete and there's no errors, there's no nothing, your data was perfect the first time out, which probably happens more than I know. We just don't hear about it. All you have to do is go in, and after you have seen this tenant event import was successful, 72 tenant events imported, then you can go to tenant event validation, or return to compliance period. This is the happiest path of them all. This is what we all strive for. I'm not promising this is going to be your experience, but this is what we want for you. And this is why we do this training. So there's a chance you're going to get an unsuccessful import. And we're going to talk about the difference between system errors, data errors, and NAMA errors. So if you get something that says failed with errors that isn't indicative, and I want to be very clear about what could be a system error as opposed to what's something you can fix. Because if you send us a ticket with something you can fix, we're going to tell you how to fix it. Object reference error is never anything you want to see. It could have been you imported when we were doing the system upgrade. Don't really know. At that point, you'd want to enter a support ticket or, talk to your agency, and your agency will enter a support ticket for you. If you attempt to upload or import a file other than an XML file or a TXT file, you're going to get an error. And this is a little weird, but if you say, hey, I got this error that says an exception and data and root level, we're going to see this right here. It says zip. There's your culprit. That's the problem. We're going to say, hey, you need to get the XML or text file. You can't put up an Excel spreadsheet. And we've had people try, but again, you're going to make mistakes the first time you do this, and that's okay. If you continue to try to upload a zip file or an Excel file after I've talked to you like 5 times, it's not, I'm not going to be, you're not going to be my favorite person anymore. Any error that doesn't display easily recognizable data errors like these two, you should report those to ProLink. We have what we call the scary deadlock error. I know we've had people see this like deadlock. What does that mean? It sounds very aggressive and mean, but enter a ticket and then we can find out what's going on. Sometimes these things happen because software is occasionally nefarious, no matter how we try to tame it. So you're going to see a support button at the bottom of the Procorem screen, right? And if you want to enter a ticket, you would find the support at the bottom of your browser and click on it, and it's going to bring up a mod or a modal for you to enter information about what you're getting and where you're at and how we can help you and things of that nature. So that's system errors specifically. Now let's talk about data errors, and pardon me for a second while I have a sip of water over here. So system error, data errors. And I know someone asked about this question, and we're going to go through some kind of the nuances of some of these messages. If you do receive an error on an import, all tenant events have not been imported successfully. Even if it tells you, because it says tenant event import was successful, this is true. This many tenant events were imported, this is true. But this one not. Whatever was going on with unit G306 has not been handled. That event did not get put in there because we have a warning and an issue. It can't convert the data. So at that point, you need to go into your system and see what's going on with G306. Are the bins not matching? Is the bin, the transfer out bin different from the transfer in bin? Is it correct? What's going on? That's a data reconciliation point for you to address in your system. Now, most of these will show you the unit number in the system, which is great when you have all different unit numbers for everything in your property. But when you have 10 buildings, they all have a 101. Sometimes it's a little frustrating to track that down in my experience, because I know I've tested data that way before. Here is an issue where you would go to D102 and it's telling you this tenant event can't be a market unit type and be marked as tax credit. So that means in your system for this unit, you have a market unit marked as a tax credit unit, and you need to fix that in your system and regenerate your XML. Here's an easy one. The reporting start date is incorrect. You need to talk to the property management system or go regenerate that file to make sure that you have the compliance dates, which I think, again, we talked about this earlier, that we will have some information on the screen that says, here's your reporting period dates. It'll be fine. Unsuccessful import of data errors. Okay. We're going to bring this up, and I know someone asked about this in the questions, and we heard you because this was part of our presentation before you even had to ask. Occasionally, you're going to get this weird message, and it says import was successful and 0 records were imported. Lytec building address has unmatched bed. So it's kind of like, how can the import be successful if there were no records imported? But bear with me. Let's parse this out in a very attorney-like fashion. The import was successful because there were no events imported to create errors. Thus, the import was successful with 0 records. That's just how we look at it. But you need to keep an eye on that. And there's going to be a way that you can go out and fix this. This means your bin's incorrect. Even if it says it was successful, there were no records import. You got to go take care of that. And you have to talk to your agency about that. So how do you fix those errors without talking to your agency? You want to get these done. You want to get it going. You don't have time to go back and forth. There are a lot of really easy things that you can do just on your own by looking in the system. So here's an example with a log message you might get, or an error message that you may get that says no building found with an address of 554 Riello Avenue. And you're like, well, Sarah, look, it's right there. Well, it's different. Why is it different? Because that doesn't spell out avenue. The system has, in the ProLink HFA, your agency has that as Ave. So in your system, this tells me you have it as avenue. So if you want to get rid of this error, what you would do is you would go into your property management system and you would change the building address to AVE and get rid of the NUE. And then you can generate your XML again. You're not going to get that error. Here's a situation where the bin doesn't match. And again, it comes down to formatting. It's hyphens. Like this one in the system doesn't have hyphens. This one does. Each state and each agency may have a different way of formatting their bins. And you know, my line is the agency is always right, but you may disagree with that and you can take that up with the agency, but I'm going to take direction from the agency. So I would think that you would need to update your bin to match that by removing the hyphens. Reporting start and end dates don't match. We kind of talked about that. We're going to have that visual that's going to show you that most of the time they do start on January 1st and end on December 31st of the reporting year, but maybe not always. The property name does not match. This one happens a lot. And this one, unfortunately, is not something you can look at yet. We've got a feature item somewhere on the backlog that should display the property name exactly as it is from the HFA system, because a lot of our agencies use naming conventions that are their own. It doesn't necessarily mean the name of your work center is going to be the name of that property. So you need to make sure that the name of the property they have in their system is the same as what's in your system to avoid the property name does not match. And it is very specific. I don't think we care about capitalization any longer, but let's say that you have, I don't know, Madison Heights is what someone has, and like, let's just say HFA has that in their system, but you call it Madison Heights Apartments in your system. It's not going to like it. Even if it's the same property, those property names have to match exactly, or you're going to get that error. Now, if you do receive unmatched bin error or address error, and you have multiple bins and addresses, and only one of them failed, it's still going to import events for other bins that did not have that problem. Like here, you can see, yeah, we didn't find the building for 554 because of the avenue issue, but everything else worked, so we pulled everything else in. That's not a complete import. The import was successful for the units that it could find an address for, but the rest of them from this particular address didn't make it. So it's just kind of be able to analyze and interpret what the log message is telling you. And then you can always contact us if you need some help with that as well. All right, so now we're going to talk about NAMA standards. And these are in the NAMA data dictionary. We will touch on that very briefly. One of the things you can't do is put in negative amounts. So in this example, someone had put in a negative value on an asset record, and it generated this right here. It's like you can't put in a negative amount. So what you would have to do is go to unit C201 and update that, either remove it, make it 0, because 0 can be fine, or make it a positive, but you can't put negative amounts in there because the system will give you an error. Ethnicity type values do not meet NAMA standard values. You're going to have to update that. And we're going deep and detailed on the ethnicity and race types coming up here because I know that trips so many people up. Gender values do not match NAMA standard values. It has to be MF or NA currently. I don't know at what point that's going to change. Again, the race type combination is invalid. We'll talk about how we can fix that and get you past that error. These are the ones that are, I would call, our most famous or most notorious errors that we do get a lot. So I try to address these specifically so you can get this information right as you are entering it into your system. When you're entering your household member information into the system, what is and what is not allowed. Income type values do not meet NAMA standard values. This was an example where someone tried to enter A for income type, and because it was alimony, but that falls under the NAMA value of N. For some reason, her system had A and it shouldn't have because it wasn't a valid value. But she got an error because of that. So, these are things you can kind of deduce and go through and think about. And again, we're always, we can assist if you need to. Okay, quick lesson on the race and ethnicity combinations. The race combinations are so much easier to understand than the ethnicity combinations. And to be honest, I looked at this for like 30 minutes one day and was like, I don't even know what this means. I finally figured it out. So I'm going to share it with you. So this is kind of an example of items you can select when you are manually entering events, but I suspect that when you're putting in data in your property management system, that you also have these options as well, because these are NAMA standard values, and that should be all that we're talking about when we're talking about the LIHTC options here. Not Hispanic or Latino, that's fine. Missing, alone, that's fine. Tenant declined to respond, that's totally fine. Hispanic and Puerto Rican, that's fine and required because it tells you that if you choose PRC, MAC, or O, you also have to select H. You would get a error if you didn't do that. It would tell you your ethnicity type was invalid, just so you know. This is definitely going to generate, see, if you just have Hispanic or Latino and you don't select either or, it's going to be mad. And then not Hispanic or Latino or tenant declined to respond. You can't have a tenant decline to respond and still respond. So that's going to bring back an error. The rule is if they don't respond, it's just that value. I mean, if you've selected TDR in your system, you shouldn't be able to allow to select anything else. Now, I can tell you that you will get an error on import, and if you manual tenant event entry, if you try to do this, you will get a validation error, and we'll show you. You can't have Hispanic and Latino and not Hispanic or Latino. I mean, the system doesn't care about your existential crisis on that one. So when importing tenant events, you'll receive an error on import if the combination is invalid. When it says ethnicity type combination is invalid, you need to go and take a look and make sure all the household members on that unit have a valid ethnicity type combination. And we're going to go through this again for the manual entry, folks. And again, that is because if you go back and watch this in pieces, parts that apply just to you, I want them to understand what that means too. So your race combinations are going to be much easier. We're going to show you what's good for that. White alone by itself, totally fine. Missing by itself, totally fine. Tenant declined respond by itself, totally fine. You can have up to 6 different values for race type. It's fine. The system will allow you to pick 6, as long as it's not missing or tenant declined to respond. So as you can see here, I have quite a few selected, but also tenant declined to respond, which is going to give me an error on import. Also, missing with anything else is going to give me an error on import. So when you get the, race combination invalid message, that means you go to the unit and see which rule you're breaking here. It's like tenant declined to respond has to be on its own. Missing has to be on its own. So hopefully that helps you get ahead of that when you going forward are starting to put in your information for your household members, that you make sure that these values are valid and they're not going to trip you up when you report next year. So we've talked about the NAMA standard, and we did not make the assumption, I did not make the assumption NAMA was like I did with AIT. You can go out and Google Data Transfer Standard Dictionary NAMA, and that's going to bring back this big document that gives you all this information that we've talked about with the ethnicity types and the alien registration number. I want to point out that should always start with A. If you get an error and it tells you your alien registration number is wrong because it either starts with a number or it doesn't have enough digits, it's because you don't have an A and the 9 numbers following that. Income type. NAMA is the one that lets us know these are all the things that we have, that the values that we accept, that we understand. And we need you to adhere to these values. Now, if you're more interested in NAMA and standards and data dictionaries and things of that nature, ProLink hosts a NAMA collaboration work center on Procorem. And you can contact Kelly. In fact, she's on the chat right now with Brian Cohn. You can pop in there if you want them to invite you to join the NAMA Work Center so you can be a party to all the cutting edge changes that we're making there, which we have version 7 now, and that's the data dictionary for version 7's out there as well. Put a note in the Q&A for Kelly or email, and she'll see about adding you to Procorem. Okay, resolving XML data errors. Here's some simple tips and tricks, and I think I've talked with many of you over years about how can we get a list of every single error you can possibly get. I don't know that I've done that, but oh my gosh, it's not for lack of trying, folks, let me tell you. So we've talked about one of these before. If you have an event in your system that the unit type is market, it can't be home and it can't be tax credit. That means you have that event, while it's a market unit type, it's selected for the tax credit program or the home program, and you can't do that. So you would have to go in your system and fix that. Sometimes you get something saying a home is a selected program. You have to have a unit type. That means you need a 1 for low or a 3 for high. And I believe we might have another one. I'll have to check that. But if you get into the situation and you're still getting this error and you are convinced that your data is correct, reach out and we can review it together. Transfer out must have an accompanying transfer in when you have your data populated in your XML. So if you have created a transfer out for one unit, but you haven't created the corresponding transfer in with the same information, you're going to get this information because the importer can't find the transfer in. You can't have a transfer out without a transfer in. Where the transfer out, again, I always joke about this. You transfer out and you don't transfer in somewhere. You may be in the car, but the car should be, I don't know where you're at, but you transfer out must have a transfer in, period. And if that's not updated in your system, you will see this. Successful import. Okay, so we've talked about errors. We've talked about all this just to get to not even the last piece of this. It's we have successfully completed the import. We have validation passed. We have the tentative import successful. We have this is the perfect situation. And now we party because we're happy. We can take a quick break and congratulate ourselves on getting through our errors, getting everything uploaded, completed with absolutely no errors. It may take a while, but we're definitely going to want to dance after we get this done, right? Because then we have to talk about the validation. Now, I think we're going back through the perfect happy path right here. Once you've imported your successful tenant events and everyone's happy and we've danced and we've Barbied out or whatever we're going to do, you want to go down and return to compliance period, because that's going to take you back to the compliance period page where you can do breadcrumbs if you want to go that way. And it'll come down here where it says tenant event validation. You also have the option of clicking return to compliance period or the breadcrumb, either one. But once you've landed on the tenant validation page, the screen's going to kind of tell you, okay, I know that you've uploaded this many events. This is how many units you have with tenant events. Now, if you have 45 units in your property, this is a pretty good number. If you have 500 units in your property and you see there's only 43 units with tenant events, you might want to go take a look back to see if you did have a successful import or did you not generate it. It just kind of gives you a high level number that might make sense to you and seem right. If it doesn't, you might want to do some due diligence to find out why. So again, perfect case. We're on the validate tenant events page. We've noted the number of tenant events and units. We're going to click the validate button. This will usually update every 5 seconds till it's done. Now, if you've passed, this is what you get. And then you can submit. And you're done. And that's the best case scenario. And that's what we all strive for. This is what we have training. We don't want any whammies. We don't want to get any errors, but sometimes we do. But our goal is to just not. Not that it is a test. I know that, it tells you passed, so you wonder. So if you get the big red exclamation point circle error, that means you have some validation errors that you have to address. Some of them, we do have common ones, and we'll kind of go over those in another validation section. But if you get these validation errors, you can just click on this hyperlink and it's going to take you directly to that unit where the event is. And in this case, you have a invalid event following a move out or a transfer out. So if you have like a move out and then you have a recert, that's not going to work. If you have a transfer out or a recert, that's not going to work either. So we're going to give you the opportunity to go back and like, oh, I may have accidentally added this in the wrong place or something like that. That's going to take you back there so you can resolve that. And if you're going to make manual updates in the tenant portal, just to get your events in, we would highly suggest that you make the same updates in your property management system so the data is the same. So next year, some inconsistency doesn't trip you up, and then you have to spend more time dealing with the previous year's events than you wanted to. Resolving the AIT validation errors. Oh, look at that. Some are AIT specific. You can resolve these by navigating back to the AIT project designations page, right? Now, when you click on this, it's not going to take you, it's going to take you to the unit, but that's not where you need to go. You need to go to the AIT project designations page and find out what's going on. Then once you fix these, you can go back. You're going to have to validate again. We having fun yet? All the validating, all the changing. It's so much fun. Okay. So once you've corrected all the errors, and I'm going to repeat this a lot, and you probably want to pay me to stop bringing this up, but I'm not gonna stop because I've had other agency folks talk to me about this. Once you have corrected all the errors, you have to validate again. Every time you go correct something else, you are going to have to validate the events again until all the errors are gone. The most important thing to understand is that when you click on these links and you go out to these units and you make these validation error updates, this page doesn't know that you did that. It doesn't dynamically update. You have to go out. It's not watching you make these changes. You have to go out, make the changes, come back and tell the system, hey, I made the changes. You need to validate this again and make sure they're correct. Once you validate it again, you may get another error that wasn't discovered until after these were fixed for whatever reason. You got to validate, validate, validate. Every time you change something, you have to validate. And by that, just going over here and clicking on that. And yes, I know, ad nauseum, any updates you make, even if you've imported your XML and you've made if you import your XML and you get one of these, like household income record is required, and you quickly go out and fix that by manually adding an income record or entering a value of 0, when you come back here, you still have to validate again, always. So when in doubt, if you come back to this page, unless you've clicked validate like twice and the errors haven't gone away, you shouldn't be putting in a ticket. You always need to make sure you over validate. Just keep validating until all those errors go away. We do get a lot of tickets where people like, her errors didn't go away or his errors didn't go away. And my first question is like, did they validate again? And it's usually no. So validate all the time. Once you validate, once you have gone through all of them, this is how you know you're done validating. And it specifically asks you if you have added or edited tenant events since a certain time, edited being kind of a key word here, you should click the validate tenant events button below prior to submission. And I know everybody just sees this and goes, colors, green, that's good. And we don't read that. We need to read that. I know from learning how to use the system that kind of bit me on the backside by not reading it. So make sure you validate it after you've made changes. Because if you've gone and made changes, this isn't going to update until you tell it to validate. So then you'll click your submit tenant events and you're done. Now, the difference between this and the happy path is that we've gone through some updates and we've fixed things and we've revalidated and we've updated and we've fixed things and we've revalidated. So then you're done. Once you've submitted it, you've gotten through all your tenant event import errors, you've gotten through all your validation errors, and you've submitted it. You can't do anything else until the agency reaches out to you in case they might need to reconcile some data about something. But you're pretty much done for now, unless they have something to say. And in that case, you won't, have to deal with tenant events until next year. Unless you're Rhode Island Housing and you upload them on the 10th of every month. Otherwise, you're good, and we can have this training next year and reach out and work with you next year if you need us to. So that's awesome. Kelly, are there any questions specifically to what we just covered, the XML, that I should address before going on to manual entry?
No, ma'am.
Really?
You are good to go.
No, that's because you guys are good at answering questions.
Thank you.
All right, so now everybody who asked about manually adding tenant events, let me get this water. Believe it or not, I don't talk this much. This is the process of steps 1 through 8 for manually adding your tenant events. You access the portal, you select the compliance period, which we've done that like 3 times through this training already. If you've been watching the whole thing, you know we've done this, but redundancy sometimes is your friend. And hopefully it'll help you to remember. Then you'll select your unit, we'll add the tenant event, enter the tenant event info, add the household members, add the household income, add household income from assets. These are all separate steps, and I'm going to walk you through all of them. So we've done this already. Access the tenant event portal, log into Procorem, go to your work center, click on the tenant event left nav menu item. Your compliance period screen will display. If the page does not display any compliance periods, contact the agency directly. That means, you're in the wrong place, or they need to add some information for you. Verify the desired compliance period year shows the events are none or pending. If the tenant events are pending, you can still upload them. That means you've probably, if tenant events are impending, that means you've already uploaded some or tried to. If it's a none, it means you haven't uploaded any at all or put in any events. And submitted means the agency has taken care of that. And if it says finalize, that means you're done. So really, our agencies are really good about closing everything out by the end of the year. When you folks who enter your events manually go out there now, you should just see a 2023 tenant event year with no events in it. And again, you can export the events from any of the previous compliance periods if you want to. But once you want to get in and start entering your tenant events manually, you click on View Events. And then you're going to see this compliance screen, right? And at that point, this is where you ignore the Import Tenant Events button and you move on to how we're going to enter things manually. So all the active units are going to be listed by your building and your bin. And these arrows will expand and collapse all the units that are in the bin. And that's how you're going to find your units based on the address and the unit number. So you're going to see the head of household for the most recent tenant event or the last event date. The tenant event validation button will take you to validate once you have entered those events. If you want to add a tenant event to a unit, all you do is click in the row where the unit is. You want to add a tenant event for 2000 whatever year to unit C101. You just click on it. It's going to take you there. And you can add your data there. Do not use import tenant events functions for manual entry. Don't. So just pretend that's not there if you're doing manual entry. Now, if you look at this page and you're seeing bins and buildings that aren't in your property and there's a data mismatch, let your agency know to make sure you're in the right place or that they do have the correct data that's in the system. So first step we talked about, you select the unit. Once you've selected the unit from that list page with the buildings and the bins, it's going to take you to the unit. You're going to see compliance all periods 2020 units. Now you can get to the unit any other way, but if you are adding events for a specific compliance period, you need to make sure you're clicking from that. So we should click this year from 2023, click on view events on the 2023 section, and that's going to bring you to where it should say 2023 up here for you. Verify the compliance year and the breadcrumb. Then if you want to add a new tenant event, just click add tenant event, and that's going to bring up a blank tenant event record. You're going to see the unit number in the bin up here in case you get lost, in case you leave your computer for a minute and come back and don't know where you are. This is going to show you where you're at. You're on this unit and for this bin. So the breadcrumbs are your friends. So once you've done that, you'll notice that there are red fields on here, red ribbons, and those are required fields. That means if you don't enter data in those and you save, you're going to get an error saying that you must enter data in here in the correct type, in the correct format. So if you have a program selected, it's going to want you, if you've got low income selected, you're going to have to select LIHTC, or you're going to have to select home. Home, you can select the unit type down here. And if there's any full-time student exceptions, you would put those here. Tenant rent, this is not required. Like to save the record, it is required to successfully validate and submit your events. So be aware of that. Now, once you come in here and you enter all your tenant event data, you're going to be on this little tab right here. And you can tell which tab you're on because you're going to see a little underline here. Once you've entered all your tenant event data, save the record, because you're not going to be able to, it's not like you go in and you enter all this data on the tenant event and then you click on the next tab. No, you have to save the tenant event. It has to be saved to the database before you can start adding household members and household income into it. So if you put in a ticket that says, I'm on here and I can't add a household member, I'm going to ask you if you save the tenant event, because you have to do that first. Now, while we're telling you exactly what is required to save a record, your agency probably has many different data points that they want you to populate. So I can tell you the software requires this, but I am not the agency. And like I said, the agency rules. And so you have to talk to them. If they want you to input anything else in the system, you should follow their direction on that. So once you have saved your tenant event record, and really I'm passionate about the saving and the validating. It's a very big deal to me. After you saved, you go to the household members tab, where the add household member button is going to be enabled. So you will click that add household member button, and the required fields that we have on here, you have the red ribbons, last name, first name, relationship. You can only have one head of household. Enter a birth date. That is conditionally required. I just always enter a birth date. And the important thing to note, if you have a household member who's an unborn child or a foster child, and they don't, apparently there's no birth date per se for that, put in the anticipated adoption date or the unborn baby's due date. Other stuff that your agency can dictate if you fill out your gender, social. I think we cover this on the next page. We do. You have to mark the LIHTC full-time student as yes or no. You can't leave it as select, because you're going to get validation errors when you try to validate your events after you've entered them. Social Security number, you can enter the entire thing or the last 4 digits. The first 5 digits will be masked, and all you will ever see is the last 4. Same thing with the alien registration number. Race and ethnicity selections must adhere to nominal requirements. We're going to cover those slides again here in just a second. I'm probably going to breeze through them. If home is selected on the tenant event as a program type, you will have the ability to enter this home student information on the household member page as well. Once you've entered all that information for your household member, you can just save and return to go back to the tenant event, or you can save and new to add additional household members if you need to. Oh, and I want to come back up for just a second. If you've made a mistake and you've added, like, say this household member is supposed to go somewhere else, and you're like, oh no, you can delete that if you need to, if you accidentally put that in the wrong place, and just let you know. So we talked about this during the XML import. We're also going to talk about it for manual import in case you are just now joining us. These are NAMA requirements, and we need to make sure that you have valid combinations so you don't get it. Now, the reason I'm going to breeze through this for the manual entry, because it's going to tell you the minute you try to do something that isn't acceptable. If you try to save something that isn't correct, it's going to give you an error. And, I know that a lot of times when you do the XML imports, you're just spouting out what the system, your property management system gives you. And, there's hope that if it's a low income unit, the property management system won't let you do this. And I don't know how that works, but that would be a great idea. It would make your life easier. These are the things you can't do. And if you try to do any of those things on the page, you're going to get the ethnicity type combination is invalid error, and it's not going to let you save it. And that's great, because then you're not going to go through validation. You're not going to have to re-import anything. You're just manually entering your data. If you're a household member and you're like, oh, that's wrong. Why is that wrong? Let me fix that. Let me save it again. You're done and you can move on. So that's the good thing about the manual entries, that will take care of this for you. Same thing with the race combinations. It's going to let you know if you've done something wrong. With race, we can have like one value, we can have missing, we can have tenant declined to respond. You can pick 5 or 6 different race items if you need to. If your tenant clicks all these and this is part of the race, that's fine. But you can't say, hey, I'm all these things, but I don't want to respond. That's no good. You can only have tenant declined to respond with nothing else. And the same thing with missing. It's got to be tenant declined to respond, and that's it. Missing, that's it. Otherwise, you can play with up to 5 or 6 things here. TDR is valid when it's the only value selected. Missing is valid when it's the only value selected. So again, when you save your manual tenant event in the system, it will let you know if it's an invalid combination, and you can, address the NAMA regulations for that. Household income tab. After you've entered all your household members, you can do your add household income. Select household member from drop down. Select your source of income. If other, put in other source text, that's totally fine. If you have a verification date, that's fine too. Enter annual income. Sometimes, and we're going to kind of go around to this. I'm looking at how much time we have. Oh, I'm going to try for us not to go over, but we'll see what happens. Okay. So if they don't have an annual income, in some cases, you want to still fill this out and put a 0 in there, just so you know for sure, because one way or another, the system wants to know if they have an income and if it is 0. And that's not just a mistake or an oopsie that you made in your system. And this is what I wanted to address. If your agency has this field enabled on the screen and your total household income is 0, you can just enter a 0 here. You don't have to go add the household income records. If if your agency allows this, and that's going to be agency specific, reach out and ask them. You can put a 0 there. That's fine. That's going to get you past the household income record where the populated annual income amount is required for this event. If your agency does not have this field enabled, you will need to enter a household income record in the amount of 0 to avoid the validation error. It's just a record in the database that has to exist to be like, yes, I confirm this person does not have any income. So household income from assets, you click the add household income from assets button, which will not be available until you save the initial tenant event record. Then you'll select the household member, type of asset. Ownership and percentage is important. If it's 100, you put in 100. If it's 50, you put in 50, because it's going to use that to calculate the imputed income. If there's a cash value, do that. If there's any annual interest or dividend percentage, use that, because depending on the type, it's going to calculate. If you don't put in a specific annual income, it will calculate it. But if there is a specific annual income the tenant's reported, put it in here. More information if you need to, because then it's going to calculate the earned income or the income from assets. And you'll see that on the front, on the main tenant event when that does calculate. And at that point, you would save and use, save and return, depending on where you want to go after you enter this information. So how many times do we have to go through those steps? For each and every tenant event within the compliance period, which is why if you don't have a property management system that generates XML and your property's big enough to where you're spending way too much time, you'll have to look at the cost benefit of that and think about it. Any questions on that part? Because we got 5 minutes left, and I think I just have to run through validation. Kelly, how are we doing?
We are okay. Sorry about that. Couldn't find my unmute. We are doing okay. Sarah, we need to do a time check. We got about 4
We got
minutes
5
left.
minutes. Well, we're going to go over a little bit. So do you want me? Okay, so I'm going to breeze through. Not that apparently I don't already talk fast, but ow, I just bit my tongue. It was not on purpose. All right, let's do this. We can do this. We got this. We can do hard things, y'all. We've already gone through how to validate and submit tenant events ad nauseum, but this is just one big section on just that. So let's hit this and get through it so we can go about our day. All right, tenant event validation. We know how to get there. We have to be in the compliance period. We have to go to the tenant event validation button. We have to get this page ready to validate. This is an example. I only had one for testing, so this one totally worked and it was great. Be aware of the units. These are like the good to know things. We're just going to high level these. Look at the numbers. Make sure they make sense to you. Once you validate, it's going to cycle through. It shouldn't take that long. It's going to pass. You're going to submit, and we're going to party. That's all we're going to do. It's very exciting. Once you get that pass button, you can submit, then you can take a break. Again, validation errors. We don't like these. Click on the hyperlink. Update the information in your property management system if you have it that you've updated in here as well, so those match and they are the same. Resolving the AIT validation errors. This is new. All right. Some validation messages are AIT specific. Now, you can resolve these by navigating back to the project designations page and finding out what's going on. Like, oh, it's telling me unit 107 has a problem. Basically, if it's a QGU, it has to be an AFG. And these two are just missing. These might be market, but you need to go into the project designation thing and change these to market. And once the data has been updated, you're going to have to validate again. That's correct. Every time you make a change, you have to validate again. After you correct all validation errors and get that green thumb, you can submit. And that's what we want. That's our favorite. What happens next? Again, once they've been submitted, the add tenant event button is going to be disabled on units. You're not going to be able to, I don't think you're going to be able to validate them. You definitely can't do anymore, add anything else to that compliance year. And you're just going to go home or back to another project you probably have on your plate and be done, because your agency is going to reach out to you if there's anything amiss with the compliance, so you don't get a scary 8823. They'll be in touch. All right, I got 2 minutes. Any questions? Okay. Help is available. When you go down here and you're in compliance period screen, you see this. It's going to have your help text. This is the URL for that. And this is kind of what some of the help looks like. I'm not sure if I showed you guys this or not, but when you go to that compliance help, it's going to show you a lot of what we talked about with the project designations in much more detail. And then there's more information about the tenant portal in there. So you have a lot of resources when it comes to going through this. Once you get to that, you can search, and you can search by tenant portal or AIT, but use the search function to find exactly what you need to use. If it's not enabled, contact your agency, because I know some of our agencies have their own training that they would prefer you to adhere to. So again, the agency always rules. Their word is always king, or queen, lack of a better word. And then when it comes to support tickets, we talked about it, that when you have data errors and data issues or something like that aren't system errors, your first point of contact should be your agency. But if you get some of those weird errors, like an object reference error, or your events are second pending, or you see the scary word deadlock, you should enter a support ticket so we can be aware of it and we can resolve the issue as soon as possible. Once you click that button, it's going to bring up all this information. And you can fill it out, your name, your email, the product, etc. Maybe the agency for customer name that you work with, because that makes it easier. The more information, the better, and the easier it will be for us to assist you. Bree, I am done.
Good job. Congratulations, that was fast.
Sorry.
Good time to reiterate that this recording and the materials from today's training will be made available to you by tomorrow. So if we can pause and go back and review whatever you might need a second pass at and continue to refer to throughout your compliance and reporting needs. Just wanted to take a minute again to reiterate, as Sarah mentioned, your state agency is absolutely your first go-to for any concerns or questions as you're walking through the process. If you feel you need some additional support separate from your work with the agency directly, ProLink is here to help you. Please reach out to marketing@ProLinkSolutions.com to consider and discuss any of the services and support that I mentioned earlier on this session. Also, I wanted to just make sure you are aware, we do have a webinar scheduled for February 8th. For this exact topic, so covering support and services that we can help with during compliance for our owner agents. So Sam from our marketing team has shared that link for you in the chat to register. It's a free open webinar. Please join us there. We'll continue this discussion. Thank you so much to Sarah for everything that she provided us today. Please contact us with any feedback, questions, anything else that we can help to support you guys through this effort. The digest for the Q&A, I think, will also be provided as a follow-up. So if your question was not answered or you missed the response or anything like that happened, good opportunity to review the digest after this call ends. And again, please reach out to us if anything was missed on your behalf. We want to make sure that you get all your answers as you're headed into compliance this year. So thank you very much. We appreciate your time. Enjoy the rest of your day. Happy New Year, and we'll talk to you on our next event.